Now that Season 1 of House of the Dragon is over, what are you going to do with your Sunday nights? The obvious choice here is to find another fantasy show to fill that dragon-sized hole in your heart, until Season 2 comes out, of course. In this video, we'll talk about 10 shows like House of the Dragon for all your fantasy and succession needs. Let's get started. First up, we have The Rings of Power. While House of the Dragon is set over 100 years before Game of Thrones, The Rings of Power takes place over a whopping 5,000 years before The Lord of the Rings. Amazon's LOTR series has been often compared to House of the Dragon, and both shows were highly anticipated prequels to long-beloved fantasy realms. The Rings of Power takes its time to go through the storyline, which might provide a nice contrast from the speeding through time we saw in House of the Dragon. The two worlds in these shows are totally different, but we bet you'll enjoy the beautifully crafted narrative from the LOTR prequel. Also, you won't be seeing any graphic depictions of assault, so Rings of Power makes for a way more comfortable watch. Next, it's Shadow and Bone. The Netflix series Shadow and Bone was adapted from the popular Grishaverse trilogy by Leigh Bardugo and the following Six of Crows duology. Viserys may have thought of his daughter as the chosen one, but Alina from Ravka actually is in her world. The show is set in the fictional country of Ravka, which is loosely based on Russia, where an orphan named Alina Starkov, played by Jessie May Lee, unleashes her magical powers that have the ability to save the world, if dark forces don't attempt to steal it first, that is. The show is also full of romantic angst, and thankfully, none of it is shown between siblings or aunts and uncles. Moving on to The Witcher. The Witcher premiered a few days before Christmas of 2019 and was widely accepted as Netflix's answer to Game of Thrones. While the comparison doesn't entirely hold true, The Witcher is definitely one of the best medieval fantasy shows to exist out there. It's highly addictive and will have you binge-watching the 2 seasons in one weekend. The show is based on the book series by author Andrzej Sapkowski, and wait till you hear the best part. Henry Cavill stars as the show's protagonist, Geralt of Rivia, who is a monster hunter with supernatural powers. Cavill's long white-gray hair, purple eyes, and that killer bod are reasons enough to give this one a watch. Just trust us. Let's talk about his Dark Materials. Based on the novel by Philip Pullman, this fantasy TV show is set in a multiverse of reality and stars Lin-Manuel Miranda. We'd watch practically anything with him in it. The plot revolves around an orphan named Lyra, who sets off on a journey to look for her missing friend, and it's on this journey that she discovers a terrifying kidnapping scheme related to a mysterious cosmic substance. The show is a perfect combination of high fantasy and compelling storytelling with characters you'll end up falling in love with. His Dark Materials has also won much critical acclaim and a number of awards from both critics and audiences alike. Following up with The Wheel of Time. The Rings of Power may be Amazon's most beloved epic fantasy, but don't go underestimating this magical story called The Wheel of Time. The show is based on a book by the same name, authored by Robert Jordan, and since its release in 2021, prior to The Rings of Power, it was widely hailed as one of the best fantasy series on Amazon Prime. That's definitely saying something. Rosamund Pike plays a powerful woman named Moiraine, a channeler who crosses paths with 5 young villagers. They set off on a dangerous journey that spans a high fantasy world where their ultimate quest is to save the world from a bucket load of evil. The Wheel of Time aptly captures the visual beauty and charm of fantasy worlds. It's got a great, powerful narrative and interestingly developed characters, and will keep you in suspense right down to the last minute. We highly recommend watching this one. Let's discuss Rome. Rome is a widely underrated historical piece that comes from the very early days of HBO, with the release date dating all the way back to 2005. This period drama outlines the chaotic and bloody years during which the Roman Republic went on to become the mighty Roman Empire. The show focuses on 2 fictional Roman soldiers, namely Lucius Vorenus, played by Kevin McKidd, and Titus Pullo, portrayed by Ray Stevenson. Created by John Milius, William J. McDonald, and Bruno Heller, the TV series tends to take some liberties by portraying the drama with historical accuracy, but the big picture is all there. It begins with Julius Caesar as he rises to power during the Civil War and follows his ironclad rule over Rome until his infamous and terrible assassination. Rome is a fantastic political piece that envisions the drama with no holds barred. The characters are compelling and ambitious, and for a show made in 2005, it was ahead of its time. Next up, we have Succession. Sure, Succession doesn't have any magnificent dragons or incestuous relationships, but out of all the shows to talk about dysfunctional family dynamics and power struggles, this one has to be our favorite. Come to think of it, it's not that different from House of the Dragon, right? Succession centers around a wealthy and privileged family of a New York mogul, Logan Roy, who founded and runs an incredibly successful media conglomerate. There's just something about this rich family and their constant tug-of-war over gaining control over the company in the future that makes this show highly addictive. The psychological machinations they pull on each other, and the quiet but heavy writing that lingers in the air long after the scene is over are just some of the things that make Succession Succession a brilliant show. Logan Roy is no less formidable or intimidating than any king or ruler we've seen in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Moving on to The Sandman. The Sandman is based on the popular comic book series by Neil Gaiman and took the entire world of Netflix by storm, and viewers like us just couldn't get enough. This fantasy show follows the story of the King of Dreams, better known as Morpheus, who is imprisoned by mortals under some seriously questionable and false circumstances. After his eventual release after a couple of decades, he sets out on a journey to restore his power and rebuild his kingdom, which practically crumbled when he was away. We don't want to give away too many details of the story, but each episode is a work of art on its own and an absolute delight to watch. The show has a great cast with some of the best performances we've seen in a fantasy show. Gwendolyn Christie absolutely nailed her portrayal of the character of Hel. While it took 30-odd years to bring this comic book adaptation to our screens, we feel Netflix has truly done a great job. Coming up, we have Vikings. This show marked the first time that the History Channel dabbled in the world of scripted TV, and it ended up being the right decision. Vikings was released in 2012 and ran for about 6 seasons. While the show was based on several Norse legends, it particularly follows the story of one Viking, Ragnar Lothbrok, played by Travis Fimmel. Honestly, they couldn't have picked a better guy to portray this character. The show follows Ragnar's rise from his humble beginnings as a mere farmer who becomes a terrifying warrior and commander of the Viking tribes. He's supported by an equally ferocious family at his back and ultimately ends up becoming king. Boy, does he kill it as a Viking king. The first few seasons focus on Ragnar and the events occurring in his life, but the latter start delving into the stories of his descendants, and they're equally phenomenal to watch. So if you're looking to drown yourself in a generational fantasy show with enough seasons to keep you busy for a while, look no further than Vikings. Last but not least, wrapping up with The Tudors. With several hangings and heads on pikes, this Showtime series is a less Shakespearean take on the Tudor years, but equally compelling to watch. Over the journey of 4 seasons, the show outlines the reign of Henry VIII, rather dramatically, played by the talented Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. Let's not forget his 6 wives who've been featured in the show as well, with Natalie Dormer playing the role of Anne Boleyn, the ill-fated wife number 2. The costumes and sets are phenomenal, the extravagant tablescapes are lovely, and the cinematography is done really well. The Tudors is a history lesson on drugs, the good kind. It's heavy on and glamour and light on the historical accuracy, but still a thoroughly good watch if you don't mind the drama of it all. That's a wrap for this video. Do you have any thoughts about these shows similar to House of the Dragon? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.